June 16th, the Selectmen's meeting. And first, some announcements. Selectman Franco and I met this afternoon with Jim Galuli, who's the traffic commissioner for Boston, in a meeting arranged by Representative Michael Moran about the Commonwealth Avenue project, and the topic was some technical legislation that's being filed to give Boston the authority to get some temporary easements along the sidewalk at Com Ave. Normally this would be done at a town meeting through a warrant article, but due to the timing, it would have required that we call a special town meeting during the summer. So the city is going an alternate route to get special authority from the state legislature, and technically the legislation states that Boston will be using powers of eminent domain to do so, but this is merely getting rights to chop up the sidewalk on private property and restore it. Do you have anything to add?
I will simply add that this impacts a very small number of predominantly institutional property owners. The affected property owners have been contacted by the City of Boston and are in fact being compensated for this temporary easement. And in my mind, and I'm sure Chair Wyszynski can correct me if I'm mistaken, today's meeting was sort of the first in a series of conversations about this, and the community leaders in the affected precincts will certainly hear from us or a subset of us, sort of familiarizing them with what's happening, why it's happening, and what the path forward is. So stay tuned for further developments. In my mind, after sitting with the City of Boston, representatives from the City of Boston, and sitting with Representative Moran, I am convinced that this is really a non-event. It seems like it's more than it actually is, and certainly a temporary inconvenience for these property owners. But stay tuned for further information and further developments.
Any other announcements, updates?
I'll simply add that I went to the Village Fair this past weekend and thought it was a great celebration of Brookline Village and all the merchants and people that patronize it. So it was a great event in my mind. I look forward to future Village Fairs, and the weather couldn't have been better on Sunday for it.
Right, yeah. Anything else? Okay, then let's proceed. Mr. Spiegel has signed up for public comment, and so the floor is yours, Mr. Spiegel.
Thank you, Chairman Wyszynski. The reason I'm here is to introduce a bit of uncertainty into the presentation you heard last week on pay-as-you-throw. Stanley Spiegel, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. I have a PowerPoint. I'm not used to using it, but here we go. It is important to avoid an undersized trash cart because we don't want to have a lot of pay-as-you-throw bags. And you heard last week that a 35-gallon cart would be enough to handle a town's average of 26.5 pounds of trash. But, as Chairman Wyszynski pointed out last week, we don't know the variation. Some people may put out 13 or fewer pounds, others 40 or more. We don't know that. But something else we don't know, and that is the relationship between the weight of trash and the volume of trash. It's the volume that will determine what will fit into a 35-gallon cart or not. And there are various estimates. And the one that DPW used is that, let's go down to the next one, that a cubic yard of trash weighs 225 pounds. That's one estimate, and if so, a 35-gallon cart would hold 39 pounds of trash. That's using the relationship, which I didn't put there. 1 cubic yard is the same as 202 gallons. You do the math, and that's what you heard last week. But an equally valid and more conservative, and I would say more cautious and appropriate estimate, is to say that a cubic yard of trash weighs only 150 pounds. And if you use that estimate, then it will take a 35-gallon cart would hold only 26 pounds, which is below, just below the town average, which means half the time people would have to use pay-as-you-throw bags. Now, I'm not saying that 225 pounds, the one DPW uses, is wrong, and that 150 is right, but they can't say the reverse either, because we don't have any measurements. And I include this chart, which I don't expect you to digest right now, but it is in your handout, that shows a whole range of values, and they all have validity. Nobody knows which is right or which is right for Brookline, and if you just quickly eyeball it, 225 pounds is near the upper end of this range. It's bigger than the state values that are used, 200 or 125, and it's near the top of the Civil Engineering Handbook and beyond the National Solid Waste Management Association estimates. So it's within the EPA range, but it's high with respect to everything else. We don't know what's right. So we have two levels of uncertainty. What's the spread of values, and what volumes corresponds to that spread? And it's important to get it right, because if you don't get it right, there's going to be a flood of pay-as-you-throw bags that require collection. My point here is that we have no knowledge as to what fits into a 35-gallon cart, because no other community has used them. You saw last week that of the 29 other communities, they all used bigger than 35, except for one which had a separate thing for for food waste removal, which increased their capacity to 64 altogether. Now, these communities, I hold, are not all crazy. They use numbers which made sense on whatever basis they established them. We do know that Newton elected a 64-gallon size, and they did that after doing a survey, which we haven't done. They did a survey, and they wanted to satisfy at least 95% of their residents, which I would hold is a good number. And that's what this board should be thinking of doing too, satisfying the needs of most residents in town, because that's what town government should be doing. It turns out that even at 64 gallons, which is double what was proposed last week, there's, out of 28,000 residents or households in Newton, they sold 2,800 bags every month. That's 10% on a monthly basis needed to go to pay-as-you-throw bags, even with a double-size cart compared to the one that's being suggested for Brookline. That's a lot of bags. And can you imagine if Newton only used 35-gallon cart, how many more bags they would have to use? In fact, for every bag that's needed with a 64-gallon capacity, they'd have to use 2 bags if it was only 35, 30 to get up to 64, and then another one to go beyond, which they need to use now. So there's a big risk that's being undertaken, and we don't know. And that's my main point. When you're working in the dark, and that's what we're really doing here, because we don't have the data. We don't have it from any other community. We don't have it from our own measurements, from our own surveys. We can look at Newton's experience, which I take it would be quite suggestive of what would happen here, and even 64 gallons would only satisfy 90% of the need in Newton. So I state as a bottom line, the unknown variability in both the volume of trash output, the weight, and more importantly, the volume, cries out for taking a cautious, gradual approach. Right now, we have unlimited trash output. You are talking about a big change in the town's philosophy of dealing with trash. Going to a 64-gallon limit itself would be a major change. Itself might have some impact on reducing the amount of trash and increasing the amount of recycling. We really don't know, but it could work that way. But for heaven's sake, if this doesn't call out for gradualism because you don't want to do something more drastic and run the risk of having half the town be unhappy and have lots and lots of pay-as-you-throw bags on the street, I think that would be a very unwise course of action to take. Consider it. There's uncertainty. We don't know. Let me just conclude, because there's a lot here to chew over, but just some final thoughts. And this is going to be heresy, but I'll say it anyway. Whereas automated pickup makes a lot of sense because it will save the town money. We also heard last week, and through other sources, that there's almost no market for recycled paper and plastic. If there's no market for it, it means there's little or no financial benefit to the town to increase the amount, because if it can't be sold, there's no payback to the town for selling it. Moreover, it will increase the amount that has to be disposed of, because if it can't be used, it has to be disposed. And we heard last week most of it is incinerated. Incineration is about the worst thing you can do for the environment. It puts CO2 into the atmosphere. It puts toxins into the atmosphere. So when you stop to think about it, when you think about increasing recycling, if there's no payoff to the town, and if you're running a very real risk of harming the environment instead of helping it, you'd be helping it if the stuff was used, recycled. But that's not what's happening. And in that case, is a recycling increase worth a major effort? Right now, at least, I think the answer is clearly it's not. It can only hurt the environment, and it can't help the town. So as you consider the step to take, I urge you to think of a cautious, gradual approach. Try 64 gallons, see how that works. These carts don't last forever. 5 years down the road, you may decide that, you know, we could go to smaller. But at this moment, I think 64 is a safe alternative. It moves you in the right direction, but gradually, reasonably, appropriately. And I think you should at least bear this in mind. It ain't as cut and dry as you might have been led to believe last week, and you need data. You can't rely on wishful thinking. You can't rely on a paradigm shift in how people are going to respond. We already recycle better than any current hybrid pay-as-you-throw community. How much more do you think we can go? And can you base policy on hope, on wishful thinking that will change? I don't think you can do it. I don't think you should do it. And I hope you won't do it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Mr. Spiegel, for a thought-provoking talk. Moving on to the miscellaneous calendar, we have the minutes of June 9th. I have minor tweak.
I have some tweaks as well.
So I will move the minutes as amended by Selectman Franco and myself. All those in favor, Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Item B, the question of approving and executing authorization of a lease purchase of Cisco networking equipment for the IT department for use by all town and school departments with Bank of America leasing for $1.2 million with a $200,000 annual cost for 6 years. That's a mouthful. Mr. Stokes, tell us what's going on.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman Wyszynski. Kevin Stokes, representing the Information Technology Department. You have in front of you, hopefully, a lease with Bank of America for the purchase of networking equipment, which effectively will allow the town to replace the entire computing infrastructure that all town departments, school, public safety rely upon to perform their work and certainly educate our children. In addition, it actually allows us to improve our security and telephone capabilities as well. So this is for the most part, this is a total refresh of our network computing environment. A little bit of a backstory on this was actually the byproduct of a budget conversation last year in FY15 where there was approximately $75,000 moved out of the school budget directly into the IT budget for the purposes of consolidating the IT spend, the pure information technology infrastructure spend. So the net of this is, while it's a $1.2 million investment over 6 years, the $200,000 annual payment actually represents a slight decrease in the overall IT spend of approximately $220 a year that we spend on replacement to the network infrastructure, service contracts, and ongoing break-fix type responsibilities. So in addition to giving us a new infrastructure with a 6-year horizon that certainly provides the necessary computing increases, is actually a good budgetary savings relative to the 6-year horizon. So with that, I can field any specific questions if you have them.
Leasing is normally a financing tool, and I've been looking for the interest rate here.
The interest rate is 0. We actually, what I left out, there's actually some significant benefits in terms of the rest of the story. The 0%, it's 0% to the town. The vendor is actually picking up the interest rate with Bank of America. In addition, we're getting several hundred hours of professional services and training credits and a sizable trade-in on the existing infrastructure we have now.
Boy, I want you negotiating my loans.
Well, actually, I should give credit to Mr. Giancakis. Unfortunately, he's on vacation tonight, but he and I have been working together on this for a year, and Town Council helped formulate the structure for the lease agreement, so those folks have been instrumental.
Any questions, comments?
So this is a lease purchase, though? So at the end, we own the stuff?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Seems like a good thing to me.
Seems like a good deal.
Sounds like an offer we can't refuse. So I'll move approval and executing authorization of a lease purchase of Cisco networking equipment for the IT department for use by all town and school departments with Bank of America leasing for $1.2 million with a $200,000 annual cost for 6 years. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
I've read through the materials. I think I can say aye.
Okay. And the chair votes aye. Moving on. Thank you, Mr. Stokes. Question of approving and authorizing Town Administrator Mel Kleckner to execute a parkland acquisitions renovations for communities grant park in the amount of $400,000 to be used towards design, construction, and improvements at Lars Anderson Park, and to further authorize Town Administrator and Parks Open Space Director Erin Galantine to submit said application and act as the municipal official in connection with all aspects of the application. And what I think we're going to do tonight is hear Ms. Galantine's presentation, entertain questions and discussion among the board, and then we'll vote it at a future session in probably 2 weeks, just so we can consider and digest what we've heard. So, Ms.
Good
Galantine.
evening. Erin Galantine, Director of Parks and Open Space. So the division requests authorization from the board to submit a park grant in the amount of $400,000. The town has already voted $660,000 at its May 2013 town meeting that would act as the town's match for a total project value of $1,060,000 to address the deteriorating access, circulation, and safety infrastructure, including access roadway, stairs, paths, historic bridge, lighting, and drainage at Lars Anderson Park, and including the addition of a perimeter walking path in accordance with the Lars Anderson master plan. These are very competitive grants, and due to overall budget constraints, have been available with less frequency and overall less value. We think that Lars is a strong candidate because it's a unique historic and cultural resource and is a regional destination. So in order for the town to be eligible to receive the grant, the state requires that the town, one, vote to raise, borrow, and appropriate the $400,000 that would be reimbursed in full. So our match is already appropriated and voted on by town meeting, but we would need to go to town meeting to get that additional authorization that would then be reimbursed in full. And second, to vote to dedicate the land identified for the grant as parkland. The land is currently being surveyed by the engineering division as drawn on the plan provided. So the area to receive the benefit of the grant and to be protected as parkland excludes all leased properties, the lawn area in front of the Auto Museum itself, the building department maintenance shops, and the park maintenance facilities, in addition to the land that is in Boston, owned by Brookline, but in Boston. These areas do not conform to the definition of park and recreational purposes. This is similar to the language that was voted on and submitted to town meeting for the Fisher Hill Reservoir. There was a exclusion of a portion of that property that was to be reserved for storage use of the Water and Sewer Division. If you remember, we looked at the property across the street and they required some additional storage, and so similarly we excluded a portion of that site from the protected status, and we are recommending that if we choose to move forward, we would do that with this application as well, and exclude anything that falls under that area of debt, maintenance, operations, and leased properties. You should also note that current restrictions on the property include, one is the bequest from Isabella Anderson that states the land is to be used for recreational, education, or charitable purposes. And there's also a preservation restriction at the top of the hill and land and water conservation fund restriction also at the top of the hill. So if approved, I'm happy to answer questions. There's a kind of more detailed project description that I included in your packets in terms of the grant application that we'd be submitting, what the money would be used for, why we think this is important and significant. And with that, I would entertain any questions that you have about it.
Selectman Daley.
Yeah, I have a question. So I'm looking at C7 of our packet, which, so when you say protected, we're talking about Chapter 97, is that correct? Article 97?
Article 97, that's right.
Okay. And so that would mean, according to this map I have, that only this little cross hatch section at the corner of Pond and Avon would, I realize from your point of view, you probably would not like us to consider any school use on the park land whatsoever, but we would now be restricted if we needed to put an additional school there to that corner.
That's correct.
Because I'm not sure that's the best corner for a school.
Well,
So the area that's identified
Take it
with
closer to the edge of town.
that is a
let's put it
very
that way.
big discussion.
Yeah.
And to be clear, no decisions have been made about
Right, and
possibility of citing
no
a
one's
school
proposing to
anywhere.
put a school.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying, and we are talking about what to do with our school-age population, and this has been one possibility that's
It's been a frequent site that's been pointed out, but
Yeah.
again, it's simply a theoretical conversation at
No,
this point.
I understand that, but we have to be very clear that we understand we're tying our hands here if we go along with this.
Right.
Because while you can get stuff out of Article 97, I don't think you can do it moments after you put it into Article 97. So, you know, I think
there
we
is a
would-
process.
Yeah.
Is the intent here, you're after $400,000?
That's right.
So you want to do that so we can improve the park and improve all these areas of it. And in exchange for that, we have to put it into Articles 97, is that?
That's correct. I think
In
the
essence-
State Department of Conservation Services feels as though if they're granting to any municipality funding for park acquisition or improvements, that land will be protected as parkland.
Are there reasons to do it this fiscal year? Before July 1st, to submit the grant, or, because obviously we couldn't be approved, but.
So the reason, I would be remiss, I feel like in my role as the Director of Parks, not bringing this forward now, for a couple of reasons. One, the improvements that are required at Lars really must happen soon. So the condition of the access roadway is totally deteriorated. And so I don't feel that we could wait. The earliest another grant round would come forward would be in 2 years. And whether or not land and water conservation still exists then, we don't know. And even whether or not there would be another park grant round at that point, we don't know. So I think the benefit is that we have the match. We need to do some work now. In the future, we may not have the match for that grant, but I think that's, it's a conversation certainly for the board in terms of what's most appropriate at this time. But the intent is to further our ability to implement the improvements.
Ms. Galantine, do you know how much money is available, and what is the, if we apply, what is the likelihood of us getting the grant? Because we would be putting this on the warrant. In essence, what we're saying is, in exchange for $400,000, we're going to put this under Article 97. So, is 400,000 the right amount of money? That's perhaps a crass question. But it seems to me we're going down a path without, because once we put this on the warrant, it's going to be on the warrant, and we'll be putting it on the warrant before we know what's going to happen with the grant. So there's a chance that we could be doing this and not get the $400,000.
We would
wanna
know-
make that conditional, I would assume, if we didn't know before.
You can actually make it conditional, and we would know before the November town meeting. So we would find out end of September, beginning of October.
So is this the maximum grant amount one can get?
It is the maximum. To answer your question, I don't know what the total value is right now. I know that it has been decreasing each year with fewer recipients. We have been successful at both Fisher Hill Reservoir, Skyline Park, as our two most recent grant rounds with a significant amount of funding. So possibly they would be interested in looking at some other communities to kind of spread, where those recipients might be. So it's really hard to say. I think the application itself is strong and the site is strong, and it has a lot of the values that they look to support for these types of grants. But whether or not we would be selected, I can't say.
Right. Selectman Franco?
So I'm familiar with Article 97 at a very high level, but not with the details. And my question stems from the fact that my understanding is that Article 97 protects open space. And there is at least one facility at Lars Anderson which is recreational in nature, but certainly is not open space. I'm thinking of the skating rink. And wondering what the implication of going forward with this plan would be on future development changes to the skating rink. Would we be sort of tying our hands to, if we wanted to make a substantive or significant change there?
So we are, the Land and Water Conservation Fund was actually used to help construct that outdoor skating rink. So there already is a restriction on that area. They will fund outdoor rinks, and they consider that as part of an outdoor park recreational use. If we wanted to make a change now in terms of a structure with a cover, they would, that's already restricted in that location.
You mean we couldn't do that?
That's correct. Without going through a process. Frankly, it's also protected under a preservation restriction, meaning it would need to go before Mass Historic as well for review and approval.
I see. What other disadvantages? I feel like I don't know the detail of disadvantages of putting ourselves under Article 97. Would we be able to put a soccer field and,
Yeah, any sort of park, outdoor recreational use, biking paths, walking paths, athletic playing facilities, also support infrastructure, comfort stations. The outdoor rink falls within that outdoor recreation category. Support elements such as parking also is supported as part of Article 97 as well. It's elements that support that park and recreational use.
Selectman Daley?
Given that, as you say, we have gotten some of these grants before, and so our chances might be a little iffier on this one, what is your plan for improving the access road, assuming we don't get
So if we,
or the-
sure, that's a great
all of the
question.
grant, or, you know, some of the
Right,
grant?
if we aren't successful in achieving the grant, we'll put out a construction bid documents for replacement and rehabilitation of the roadway, associated drainage, some access lighting. We will try to make some improvements to the parking area. Parking facilities supporting the outdoor rink are woefully shy of what we need in that area. And we may be able to do a little bit of work on the stairs, but we wouldn't be able to get to the network of paths, and we wouldn't be able to do the perimeter walking path.
I wonder if you have, I know some of the parks have a Friends of the such and such park. If, you know, you might get some volunteer organization to have some work days, you know, to work on the paths. Or is that not?
We're building paths. These are actual constructed asphalt paths.
Okay.
But, I mean, we work with many friends groups, neighborhood associations, private donors. I mean, I'm always open and willing to work with folks who want to make contributions to our parks.
Any other comments, questions?
One question.
Sure.
I noticed that in the discussion here, there's no indication that there's going to be hydration facilities other than the comfort station. Are there any thought to increasing the number of water fountains? This is a big issue in Brookline these days, as you know, we want to reduce the use of bottled water, and this is a large park. I was wondering, you know, what type of hydration facilities are there now, as well as what plans there are for the future.
Okay, terrific question. There's currently one drinking water fountain at Lars Anderson Park outside.
So we'd have to sell bottled water there.
But we, with all of our park projects now, are looking to have both the drinking water accessible bubbler with also the bottle filling station unit combined. So we would look to do that at Lars, and frankly, I agree that we need to look at having additional water stations included.
Okay, so as I said, we're not going to vote this tonight, so thank you.
Okay, so please just let me know if there's any additional information that you need.
Right.
And I'm happy to provide whatever that might be. Thanks.
Thank you. So moving on, question of accepting the following grants on behalf of the police department. The Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant to be used to improve streamline information in the computer system for $81,646.12, and DOT Pedestrian Bicycle Enforcement Pilot Program to be used to improve overall safety in high-volume intersections during rush hour for $8,100. Chief.
Good evening. Thank you. Yes, I'm here to appear to see if the board will accept these two grants on our behalf. The first one, the larger amount in excess of $81,000. Currently, our computer system is functioning extremely well. It's pretty much up to date, except we're not to the point where we want to be as far as automating our reports. We, as you know, use data a lot to assign our offices to see where we want to, where we're getting crimes, where we're getting community problems, and how well we're managing them. And this grant will allow us to design the type of reports that we need and let the computer do the work. A lot of the work will get automated for us. It'll reduce the staff hours that we use going through the different systems and putting the information together. So we think that that would go a long way towards improving the way we get our information out to our offices, make it a lot quicker, and get us to resolve problems a lot sooner than we do now.
Why don't you tell us about the other one.
The second grant for $8,100, the DOT has this program where they take a look and they invite police officers to apply. We were one of 7 that were asked to apply based on our efforts to reduce accidents involving bicyclists and pedestrians. We did identify 5 intersections that we wanted to do some work at both the morning and the evening commute. And this is the first phase, at least, of this grant that we would get for this amount. And the areas that we picked for high volume, both of the three things, cars, pedestrians and bicyclists, are Brookline Ave and Parkway Road, Harvard and Beacon, Longwood and Chapel, Washington and Harvard, and Beacon and Washington. Those intersections would see increased enforcement and presence of officers. It's not necessarily that we're going to do enforcement resulting in fines, but a lot of it will be educating the bicyclists and pedestrians about safe crossing of the roadway.
Any questions, comments?
So I think you were before us previously about the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Grant. So I seem to recall that we're using this money to buy some technology, do some education, and generally improve our IT infrastructure in the police department. I'm a little less clear on what we're using the $8,100 for from the DOT grant. Is that going to pay for overtime, or is it to print educational materials? What are we using the funds for?
We're going to pay for officer overtime during those rush hours. And that first grant that you had mentioned, the first JAG, that was actually a two-part, this is actually a two-part grant that we could apply for. We did that first, and we got a little excess of $28,000, and we devoted that money to our traffic enforcement efforts with racial profiling as the background, that we wanted to make sure that those reports came out more timely.
Got it.
And
Thank you
that
for
is
setting me
actually in
straight.
development right now.
Selectman Green.
First, I'd like to say that I wasn't able to get here early because I had to deal with my son who recently had surgery. And I didn't get a chance to mention that on Friday, the chief was gracious enough to show me around the police department, give me a briefing on, what they do, some of the issues they face. I learned a lot. I learned, more importantly, a lot that I need to learn more of. So I appreciate that. And we did talk about this, the grant to some degree. And I just want to use this opportunity to thank you for, that opportunity to help me get up to speed on, this very important aspect of our duties as members of the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. I enjoyed myself as well.
Selectman Daley.
Yeah, I just want to make actually my usual comment that I appreciate, as always, your department's vigorous efforts to secure these grants, and these are certainly significant amounts of money, so very good.
We haven't stopped.
Selectman Heller.
I second what Selectman Daley said, but I also wanted to add a question. Have you determined, or does your department have any feeling about what educational materials or tools work best in terms of educating, especially bicyclists who don't have to go through the kind of licensing things that automobile drivers do, in terms of their understanding of the rules of the road, and I'm seeing people go the wrong way down a one-way street. I'm assuming that on bicycles, I'm assuming that's incorrect. They're supposed to follow the rules of the road, is that not correct?
Unless there's a designated bike lane
Right.
that goes against the traffic.
Right.
But they're supposed to follow the rules of the road, yes.
So, do you hand out to people who you stop something about this, and is it possible to broaden the reach of that in terms of getting to people who, obviously there are lots of people in Brookline who ride their bikes, but there are also people who come from other communities, and
We've been doing this is just part of an extended effort. We've been actually doing it for several years now. We've stepped up. We do have printouts, cardboard printouts that tell the rules of the road. We do have some of it printed up on put up on our website as what we do on that. This will just enhance it during those specific hours that are usually in the middle of our shift change, like the early morning that we've identified from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. We do the middle of the shift change, and during the school year, a lot of our officers are tied up doing school traffic. This will allow us to get extra officers into the queue and then have them do this work. But a lot of it does entail us educating them when we stop them. I know that we take a look at some of the things, not just the number of bicyclists that we stop and identify and give them the the information, but we also look at our accident rate, and we've seen a decline in accidents over the last 4 years. I think the year prior to 2013, I think was 73 accidents involving bicyclists, and we're down to 53 last year. We hope to get down a little further this year as well. So this, I think, will help us. You know, sometimes it's confusing for them because some of the intersections give you a green light and a walk arrow at the same time, and that's the type of thing we have to try to get people to realize, that this is going on, like up in Coolidge Corner. There's a lot of people crossing the street at the same time you get a green arrow. Well, we want to make sure that people understand that, you know, there's different groups trying to use the road as a balance there.
And the pedestrians have the first right of way, is that correct?
As long as they have the walk light.
Yeah.
Any
Of course, a
other,
lot of pedestrians think they have the right of way even if the lights are red.
True.
okay, I'm going to move approval of the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant to be used to improve streamline information and computer system in the amount of $46.12. Did I say that right? And we should also accept the DOT fiscal year 15 pedestrian bicycle enforcement pilot program grant to be used to improve overall safety on high-volume intersections during rush hour in the amount of $8,100. All those in favor, Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Chief.
Thanks.
Moving on to the question of approving a transfer of $17,000 to repair and maintenance, motor vehicle repair and maintenance, and $8,000 to motor vehicle repair and maintenance. Chief Ford, tell us what's going on.
Good evening. Well, I'm here seeking an appropriation transfer from two of our supply accounts to our repair and maintenance account on our apparatus. We've had, while we budget for repair and maintenance each year, we've had an extremely tough year and actually tough spring. We had an unexpected $40,000 engine replacement on one of our frontline apparatus.
Wow.
So
40,000.
just that math alone, we're seeking to move $25,000 tonight. I will be before you in a week or so looking for a little bit more from the reserve fund for that. But all in all, we had unexpected $40,000 there. Tower 1 has given us some grief, and we've had several bills, one of which was $10,000, and we just had a major engine issue with Quint, which arrived at $8,000.
I'm going to stop complaining about my car repair bills.
So, typically we're able to handle these within our budget and have been in the last 3 budget cycles. This year's just a little too tight.
Selectman Franco.
So we heard from you, I think about a month ago, when we were settling up on snow, that you had to run your engines more than usual because of the amount of snow clearing that you had to do around fire hydrants. I'm wondering if these repair bills have anything to do with that, or it's just a bad year.
I wouldn't put these bills on those specific incidents. It's wear and tear, and things happen. When your car breaks, what caused it? Was it the ride you were on that day or some other ride? The ladder engine actually went while we were on mutual aid out of town at a fire, and the engine went. And we did some wheeling dealing. We had an opportunity to, the original quote was just under 35. We had an opportunity to have the engine rebuilt for 35. We had a fire engine out of service with a broken transfer valve that was about a $12,000 job, and we had elected not to do it. We actually got another entity to replace the engine, a 64,000-mile engine, replace it with a 34,000-mile engine, and fix the transfer valve, on the transfer case on the other fire engine for the same 35. We did have some extras afterwards. The radiator had to be redone. These engines come out, they literally have a big hole in the roof of the cab, take the interior out, and lift the engine out through the roof of the cab. So while they're in there, if the radiator looks questionable, which it did, they go along and do that. So we did some work to get the most bang for our buck. We actually got 2 pieces back in service for that 40, but it still was unexpected 40.
Okay. Any other questions, comments there? Here, seeing none, I'm going to move approval of the following transfers within the fire department appropriation: $17,000 from motor vehicle supplies to motor vehicle repair maintenance, and $8,000 from PS. What's PS?
Public safety.
Public safety supplies to motor vehicle repair and maintenance. All those in favor? Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Chief
good night.
Ford. Oh, now we have a selectmen's.
Good evening. This is actually the town meeting account, so we'll manage it for town meeting.
Okay, what's going on?
I think you remember at the last question on the budget this past year was about the increase that we needed for town meeting. It's related to electronic voting, so the budget will be set in 16, but we're falling short in 15, so we need to move $5,000. We're moving it from the town administrator's professional services budget.
I've got to say, now that we've gotten the hang of the electronic voting, it does speed things up over the old system of people standing up and being counted and
It sure does.
so on. So-
And because it speeds things up, I think there's less of a reluctance to ask for a counted vote, a recorded vote. So I think the number of recorded votes is going up, which I think is a good thing, that town meetings constituents, town meeting members' constituents have a better idea of how their representatives are voting. So,
Are there still issues regarding reliability of the system? You know, properly count or accurately counting
I
the...
think the recap that was provided to Sandy, there was an issue where someone took the wrong machine. So basically, it was not anything that was wrong with the system, it was just a human error of getting the wrong voting device. But pretty much, the recap that I saw was that it went pretty smoothly.
yeah. Okay. I will therefore move approval of the following transfer within the Selectmen's appropriation: $5,000 professional technical services to $5,000 extra compensation. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
And we now have a temporary wine and malt beverage license to Hellenic College. The police department has reviewed it, and it appears to be in order. All the documents, there's a ServSafe certification. Being that it's in order, I will therefore move approval of granting a temporary wine and malt beverages license to Hellenic College in connection with the Massachusetts Association of Women in Law Enforcement event to be held on June 8th, 2015, from 5 to 9? June 18th, I'm sorry. From 5 to 9 at the Maliotis Center, 50 Goddard Avenue, and I didn't ask if there were any questions or comments. Seeing none, I'll go to the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So now we're moving on to our main calendar. Finance assessing personnel, question of authorizing the filling of the following positions in the Finance Department: Assistant Assessor, Senior Office Assistant, Assessing Division, and Mr. McCabe, are you going to be handling the Payroll Division, Senior Office?
I am.
Okay. Tell us what's going on.
All right, I'll be happy to do that. Chairman Waschinsky, thank you. I'm Gary McCabe, Chief Assessor. I want to thank you for the opportunity to request 3 authorization to hire actions. Let me give you, if I may, a quick summary of why I'm here. I can tell you that the assessing department of the town is responsible for managing one of the town's largest assets, and that's the town's property database, which has 3.1 million data fields. that we maintain annually. And we use that information to assign values to our $20 billion tax base. So we're always focused on this database and how it's running and if it's up to date and current and accurate and that sort of thing. We also use the database for other things. And those opportunities, I think, are growing to use our assessors database in other ways. Some of you have seen that, I think, and will continue to see that in the future. And I wanted to share one quick example with you, very quick. I received from a town meeting member in Precinct 6 today for information from our database, and it went like this. Gary, I think you're the person to ask about the following item. I have to present before the Transportation Board on Thursday, and I'm hoping to have some facts about the following 3 sections of streets. Sections: Babcock Street between Harvard and Comm Ave, St. Paul Street between Beacon and Comm Ave, Pleasant Street between Beacon and Comm Ave. The facts I need: number of housing units on each street and the number of bedrooms on each street. I hope you can get that information to me as soon as possible. So this, we should be able to do that. This data is available in our database. So I would think
that's a pretty easy query.
Well, it wasn't.
Okay.
That's exactly why our needs have shifted, is because we need to spend more time on understanding these requests and building a database and research or queries to get the data out in a timely manner and so that it's usable for others who are doing research and for analysis. So we were able to get most of that information together, but and we'll finish it tomorrow, but it's more complex than it would seem. In determining, there's 2 large, for example, there's 2 large Brookline Housing Authority properties that front on those streets, but the entire property is not on that street. So there's a number of units on Babcock or St. Paul, but the entire complex is not. So you have to break down our data further than just to a parcel level sort of thing. So I wanted to share that with you. The assessors are also responsible for issuing 35,000 motor vehicle excise bills every year, give or take 1,000, that generate tax revenue this year, fiscal year 15, of $6.2 million. And we need some additional help to do that. The assessors are also responsible for administering 10,800 residential exemptions, with approximately 1,000 of those that change each year. And we need some additional help managing that. On the other hand, we looked at what our responsibilities are now. And for example, we have currently pending 20 property tax appeals before the Appellate Tax Board for fiscal year 14 and approximately 20 for fiscal year 15. Those numbers are down significantly from where they were 5 years ago. So what we've seen within the assessing division is a shift in needs, more from a defensive value, defensive assessments, to managing our database and providing information to others who want to use it. And that's really the nature of this request. So what we did in our budget process this year is presented a budget that was consistent with the maintenance budget requirements of the town administrator, but we moved some salary from one position to 1.5 other positions. So we're going to be eliminating a senior position within our department starting July 1 and creating 1.5 positions to replace that senior position. So there's a senior assessor position that will be gone, and then we'll have a new junior assessor position, which will be the data analyst we're requesting, and then a half-time clerk position, senior clerk position, to meet these needs we have.
Yeah. Do you have somebody, is somebody retiring in the senior position?
We have someone in that position, they're not retiring. They'll be moving on.
Okay, they're leaving the town's employment?
Correct.
And is that because you said we're eliminating your position?
Correct.
Or? Oh.
Right. So it was something we spent a great deal of time considering. But our needs were demonstrated that we needed to do this. And it's been a few years in the making.
Okay. And this is really a question for Mr. Kleckner. So the senior position that's being eliminated is sufficient to fund the 1.5 new positions that we're creating?
Correct.
But obviously will incur more in terms of benefits and...
No, I don't believe that part-time clerical will be benefit eligible.
I believe that's correct. Half-time senior clerk, 18.5 hours is not benefits eligible.
Right, so it's one full-time and a half-time.
Okay.
Right. Currently, in the assessing division, there's one clerk. And the professional staff make up the difference. And that was part of this growing need, is to weigh shifting professional staff time to clerical support or change the structure of the office. And we decided to move forward through the budget process. So, you know, it came through each step with an additional review, advisories, you know, subcommittee, your review, town meeting review, and here we are with the approved budget.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, having a shift like this is a very, very tough thing, and it's probably one of the toughest decisions you can make as a manager, but sometimes you just have to do it to you know, meet the needs of the department and the town, and I congratulate you for taking that on. You know, it's tough. You know, I've been in that situation myself, and you just have to do it, and sometimes.
Well, thank you, Chairman Waschinsky. The history of the department, this isn't the first time this has occurred. You know, as technology has changed, and that's what's driving some of this as well. You know, technology is in our favor in what we do in the assessing department, particularly things like geographic information system. Our data is used to support the town's geographic information system more and more. And, you know, we have to dedicate more and more time towards that. So this data analyst position would be involved in that as well. And we see that as a better tool for our taxpayers and our residents to go, you know, onto our website and find out information. They don't have to come into our office. They don't have to call us up. And again, on the other side, the skill set that we're giving up is a very good one, but the responsibilities have narrowed significantly. In addition to the salary savings made up in the 1.5, you know, full-time equivalent, there will still be almost $5,000 additional funds that we requested stay in our budget to hire expert outside appraisers. So when we go to court, we can bring in that expertise if we need to, as opposed to bringing it with us from a staff person. So that we've, you know, accounted for some of those needs using outside sources. Yeah.
Well, I will say I'm happy that you're able to make these changes to better suit your needs. In general, though, I want to say I'm a little uncomfortable structuring, you know, an office assistant doesn't make that much money anyway, and then you structure the position so that they don't get any benefits, and, you know, I think all too often those are the job level at which people get disadvantaged, and I just want to say I'm not, you know, wildly enthusiastic about doing that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's within. This is what we could do within the, you know, maintenance budget structure. But I can tell you that C5 senior office assistant position in step 1 is $21.62 an hour. So, you know, I'm encouraged by that. You know, we had, when you first hired me 8 years ago, we actually had 2 clerks in our office. So, you know, we took the budget cut and went down to 1, and it just doesn't work. You know, we really do need, we actually borrow from other offices within the finance department to support our, clerical needs. So,
Selectman Green.
Yeah. I'd like to sort of echo Selectman Daley's comment and sort of ask a question. So the part-time employees without benefits, what, do they pay for their own health insurance? How does that work?
We don't offer
the town doesn't pay for it.
We don't offer that benefit for part-time people.
So in other words, these are new employees without benefits who will also use part of that $21.65 to pay for health insurance.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, people's individual circumstances differ. They could be on a spouse's health insurance.
But we don't know that.
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, I just want to, make the statement that, it does make me a little uncomfortable also. My second question is sort of what will be my usual comment with respect to hires. Have you made efforts to ensure that the applicant pool is sufficiently diverse, Black and other minority applicants being presented to for your consideration? I see that you mentioned a couple suggested sources of recruitment advertising. Are you expanding beyond those, or what?
Yeah, Selectman Green, thank you. We're very interested in expanding our advertising well beyond the couple examples we gave there. I'm planning on meeting with Lloyd Gelano as well as HR. I've looked at the Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations Department resources. We've looked at the blueprint for recruiting. I'm very excited about that. We will start tomorrow, if you approve this, looking at all the ways that we can attract as many candidates as possible. I expect that we will. This is even the part-time clerical position is in the town of Brookline government, and as we know, that's a pretty good place to work. So, I'm hoping that we'll be able to attract some qualified candidates.
There's one other position that you're going to be talking about. This is replacing a person who's retiring in
Payroll?
in the payroll.
Payroll, yes, I am here to represent my boss. The
So
finance
we'll
director.
vote them all together, so why don't you tell
Yes,
us
thank you.
briefly about that?
It's a full-time senior office assistant position. I believe the paperwork that you're looking at may have the incorrect position code on there. It's also a C5, a code within the HR structure of the town. If you have a document that says T601, I'm told that's a munis code, so, but it equates to a C5. So it's really the full-time equivalent of the part-time position that we're hiring in the assessor's office, and it is to replace someone who's retiring. And I spoke with the payroll director today, and to go over that, and she's the one who gave me the numbers, $21.62
Right,
to start, and that does have benefits.
And that position, too, your department will seek the assistance of Mr. Gelano, Dr. Gelano, and HR, and seeking a diverse applicant pool. Any questions, comments? Therefore, I will move approval of authorizing the filling of the following positions in the Finance Department. Assistant Assessor, GN 10, I've been in the federal system too long, GS. Assessing Division, that's GN 10. Senior Office Assistant C5, Assessing Division, and Senior Office Assistant C5 in the Payroll Division. All those in favor, Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair will vote aye. Thank you, Mr. McCabe.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to library personnel. Question of authorizing the filling of vacancy in the position of business manager in the library department. And you just love coming to visit us, Ms. Slyman.
I'm Sarah Slyman, I'm the library director, and I'm requesting authorization to fill this KA5 business manager position, which would be filling out retirement.
Questions, comments? I'll echo, I'll let Selectman Green ask the question.
My usual question, what efforts, other than the MMA town website, and Simmons job list, and MBLC, whatever that is, maybe you can tell me.
It's the Mass Board of Library Commissioners. It's the agency that governs public libraries in the state of Massachusetts.
So, my concern always is the applicant pool that you're looking at to fill positions sufficiently diverse to be representative of the population of this area. So, what steps are you going to be taking to ensure that that pool is diverse?
Well, I've never had to fill an accountant-type position in any of my previous positions, so perhaps I'll echo what my colleague said, and I'll reach out to Dr. Johnson.
Yeah, I can tell my colleagues on this board that I know Lloyd Gelano has developed an extensive list that I believe HR is using pretty regularly as to where they send the postings out to, that gets out to a lot of diverse organizations throughout the Boston area.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I just want to express my concern that you make use of those resources.
I will happily avail myself of those resources.
Okay, seeing no further comments or discussion, I will move approval of an authorization to fill the vacancy in the position of business manager KA5 in the library department. All those in favor? Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? And aye. Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you all. Good evening.
Okay, moving on. Ms. Galantine, review and approval of the updated Park and Recreation Commission rules and regulations. And as I understand it, this is basically a reorganization of the rules to make them a little clearer and easier to read. And there are just a couple of new things in here. One is a prohibition of smoking in our parks and a prohibition of blocking water play area drains. So that's the only thing that's new here. So with that in mind, Ms. Galantine.
Okay, thank you very much. Erin Galantine, you may have, Director of Parks and Open Space. So the Park and Rec Commission has submitted for your review and approval their updated rules and regulations. This is the use of parks, playgrounds, school grounds, and other open space in the town of Brookline. Now, these were last updated in 2003, and the only change at that point in time was the amendment to the definition of dog run, which enabled us to implement the Green Dog Program. Otherwise, these rules and regulations have remained unmodified since 1969. So the revisions, as Selectman Wyszynski mentioned, is overall an improved organization, general categories that are more logical, easier to understand. We think that it clarifies areas that were either ambiguous or confusing in the 1969 rules and regulations, and adds some additional definition where we felt it was necessary, such as hours of operation. It had formerly been dawn to dusk, and we've, it's a little more sophisticated now, recognizing that we have some lit facilities, we have some hardcourt play spaces, and what the rules are around those particular facilities and hours of operation. And we added a couple areas as well that we thought needed some to be included in the rules. And these have been discussed at more than 3 public meetings. They were approved unanimously, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Selectman Daley.
I just had one thought. I'm on section E, forbidden activities, 11, and it says dogs are never allowed on or in any of the following playgrounds, water play areas, synthetic turf fields, etc. Shouldn't there be an exception for, I guess they're called service dogs now. I was thinking of guide dogs, but I think that they're generally called service dogs now.
I think that actually is an understood exclusion in the town bylaws, section 8.6.7, but I will confirm that. They are not restricted from any areas.
Right, so I just thought maybe this should reflect that we know that they're not excluded.
Yeah, good point.
Selectman Green.
I'm curious as to what type of enforcement of some of these you have had to exercise. The first one, indecent exposure, attire in such a fashion as constitutes indecent. I mean, what does that even mean? I guess is my question. Wait, let me just.
Yep.
The other two really relate to areas where, you know, in many areas you have the risk of arguably discriminatory enforcement practices, and that's the issue of disorderly behavior and loud music. What is your experience in terms of enforcing those prohibitions?
So the rules and regulations are generally enforced by the police department, and we have had only a few instances where there have been complaints that needed action by the police. There were a couple instances where there was some homeless activity, and those individuals needed to be escorted to a safe place and out of the parks that they were inhabiting.
So you're saying that there's little need to actually enforce these prohibitions?
I think what I'm saying is it is important to have rules and regulations.
That's
right. But we do not have a lot of problems in our parks and open spaces, I think, with general conduct. And that is largely because we have a tremendous amount of support from the police department, and we have park rangers that educate as to the rules and regulations, and their role is not enforcers, but to help educate as to what the rules and regulations are and why they're important. And having clear rules and regulations certainly helps us in our ability to educate.
Any other questions, comments? I think I fully support the prohibition on smoking. I'm glad we're doing it. So seeing no other comments, questions, and the fact that the Park and Rec Commission has gone through an extensive process to get us to this point, which I appreciate. I'm sure my colleagues do too. I'm going to move acceptance of the updated Park and Recreation Commission rules and regulations.
Can that be with the addition of my one phrase, dogs, comma, except service dogs, or something like that?
I'm happy to make sure that's included.
Okay, as amended by Selectman Daley, that'll be included in the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so now we have renewal of the open air parking licenses. This is a once-a-year event, and I'm looking for my paperwork. I'm not.
It's right in front.
Oh, this is it. Okay. And all of the open air parking licenses, with a few exceptions, have passed all their inspections and have gone through approval with all of the departments. There are 3 licenses that have not filed the appropriate paperwork yet, and that's Dunkin' Donuts, it's 265 Boylston Street, 195 Rawson Road, and 1646 Beacon Street. And the recommendation from staff is that we approve those 3, subject to filing the appropriate paperwork and the payment of a $50 late fee. So Mr. Kleckner, should our motion be kind of a two-stage motion, or how should I do that?
I think you can approve, and then with the condition that the following 3 licenses are subject to that condition.
Okay. So is there any discussion, comments?
We've got to cool our heels for 2 minutes, because this is the public hearing. It's noticed for 8, I think. Right?
No, that's the next item.
Oh, that's the next item?
So we will then cool our heels for 2 minutes
Okay.
once we vote this.
I'm anxious to get to the next item.
So I will move approval of the renewing the open-air licenses with 3 additional conditions for 265 Boylston Street, 195 Rawson Road, 1646 Beacon Street, that they be approved subject to the filing of appropriate paperwork and a $50 late fee. So all those in favor of the motion to approve them all with the 3 with an additional condition, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And chair votes aye. We are 1 minute early. Wow, we're on time.
You're amazing, Chairman Wyszynski.
My God. That's the first time anyone said that to me up here.
Savor the moment.
Yeah. We'll see if by the end of the night people are still saying that. So the clock has passed 8 o'clock, so we're going to consider the question of approving the application of Toichi Ikeban LLC doing business as...
Are we not doing the food?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, 9. I jumped ahead. Please excuse me. Question of approving the application of Cabinete Investment Group LLC doing business as...
It's going to be called Levite.
Levite, okay. Victor Picardo, that's...
Pichardo.
Pichardo, okay. Manager for food vendor license at 1644 Beacon Street.
Correct.
Welcome, and tell us what's happening.
Thank you. Well, if you like a background about me and my partners present, we have worked in the food and beverage industry for over 10 years. I have worked at the Chatham Bars Inn in Cape Cod. I've been a bartender and a bar manager there. And through my experience in the food and beverage industry and the fact that my team, we thrive in healthy lifestyles, and we seek good habits of eating and good habits of being healthy. We developed the concept of providing healthy food and drink items to the population that is on the rush, the population that sits in an office and has a half hour of a break and needs to find food that is healthy and at the same time can be quick. And that's pretty much, that encapsulates the concept of, and you have a brief copy of the menu there where we present our juices, smoothies, and salads and paninis. So basically in the morning, if you, rather than have a donut every day, you will have a fruit cup, or you will have a great smoothie that's going to have good carbs, good proteins, good energy from the fruit to sustain you through the day. And if at some point you like to have a good panini, we are going to provide the best possible available ingredients, including chicken, including the bread that is going to be no sugar, just what bread's supposed to be. Yeast, a little bit of salt, and the flour. Not a whole list of ingredients that we can even pronounce. So that's our interest in providing healthy food items in a clean, efficient way to the population that it's on the road, the population that it's looking to eat something quickly and at the same time feel that they had a great meal. Like if you were to cook something at home, like if you were to make a sandwich at home, you would make it with the best possible ingredients. And that's what our concept, and that's what we are happy to bring to Washington Square, where we study that there's a lack of what we are providing.
That sounds very interesting. Selectman Daley?
Yeah, it does sound good. I have to admit, I'm developing a little complex when I see kale. It's like everybody has kale, everything, so. But it does look like an interesting concept. My question, though, was, I'm surprised that you're going for the food vendor license. So you're not planning on having any seats or anybody able to sit down and eat their sandwich there, because you know if it's a food vendor license, it has to be strictly takeout.
Right, and the reason for that is that the space that we are renting does not allow for any seating. Because of the situation of the restroom that we have, it couldn't be turned into a handicap accessible, so we are only allowed to apply for the food vendors. Now, we have priority in leasing the space next door to us, which is a shoe repair store, right? I'm not sure if you know, but that has been there for 20 years, and for some reason there was, our realtor expressed that he may not be interested in renewing when his lease expires. So in that event, we will apply for a license that allows for seating, if we can lease the unit next door. And that was our original idea, but we couldn't make the restroom handicap accessible in order to provide for seating.
Okay. Well, this is my neighborhood, and I will tell you, you are correct. There's not much, there's a lot of nice restaurants around, but to go grab lunch or something is there's not that much opportunity, so I think you are filling a need.
Thank you.
Any questions? This isn't a public hearing, but I'll invite anyone from the public who wishes to speak in favor or not in favor of this license. I see none. The building and police departments have approved the application. The health department has approved the application subject to standard conditions that go on every license. You'll be handling your litter in a responsible way. If there are odors, we'll hear about it, and then you'll hear about it.
And we'll have a method to
Right.
make sure that everything is in place.
And you're requesting hours from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday to Saturday, Sunday 7 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Correct.
It's clearly within the scope of surrounding businesses in the area. So that doesn't present any concerns to me. With being that I don't see any other comments or questions, I will move that we approve the application of Cabinetti Investment Group, LLC, DBA Levite, okay. Victor Pichardo, manager, for food vendor license at 1644 Beacon Street. All those in favor? Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And chair votes aye. Good luck.
Good luck to you.
Thank you very much. I hope that you can pay us a visit someday.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on. The question of approving the application of Toichi Ikiban LLC, doing business as Toichi Ikiban. Please help me with the pronunciation. Wikun Ma and Changru Ma, managers for a common victualler license at 5 Kendall Street. Welcome. Tell us what's going on.
Yes, good evening. My name is Mei Hui, who I represent Toichi Ichiban LLC. Standing next to me is Hui Kun, and her brother is with us today as well. He flew in from China yesterday to make sure that he made it to this place here.
Wow.
It's an honor for them. They actually found the place and they discovered this Kendall Square area, Kendall Street area, where not only there are no sit-down restaurants close by, and so they're exploring the opportunity. Prior to today's, our proposal, the location has been used by C2U Sushi, which is a sushi school that people go and learn how to make these Japanese delights. And on weekends, you can often see 30 to 40 students attending schools. And so our assumption is that with that kind of capacity, and that neighborhood would not have any problem accommodating people coming in as diners to come to this restaurant that we are proposing. So for that, I just bring that out to, just in case the board has some question about parking.
What you don't know is 2 of the 5 members of the board are residents of that neighborhood and are perhaps abutters, or almost, not quite, almost abutters. So
Right.
Selectman Franco and myself are very, very familiar with the location.
Terrific. And for that reason, we also reached out to the neighbors to get a feel of how their sense of opening up a sit-down restaurant in that neighborhood. We actually gotten a lot of support. Many people signed their show of support, and I have some original notices here, and I will leave it with the secretary.
We have copies. I think we've received copies, but you can submit the originals.
Terrific. So let me just introduce that the manager here. She has 6 years of experience working in the restaurant industry, and her brother, also Michael, has been in the restaurant business for the last 6 years. He opened up 3 different Japanese restaurants in China in 3 different major cities. So he has definitely extensive experience in the food business. But right now, I think he's going to rely on Hui Chun to help him out on this. Hui Chun has obtained her full license, full training license, and she is also passed her allergen food service awareness classes. So I think she is well qualified to help out in the business that is going to open.
Tell us about what kind of food you're going to be serving, and this is your opportunity to market your restaurant.
So you want to give it a try? Yeah, my pronunciation may be not correct, but I'll try my best to you guys understand me. Just
speak into the mic.
A little closer to you. Just pull it over. There you go. My restaurant will be open to provide the sushi, tempura, and noodles, and the sesame, and we will provide the healthy and fresh food to the neighborhood. And I'm sorry, I'm getting nervous.
No, you're doing great.
And we'll, sorry, start with the language, so.
So Hui Chun is trying to say that they'll keep the restaurant clean, clean, and provide healthy food. And as the menu that we enclose with our application shows, that it's just going to be fresh ingredient that we found from the fish market every day, and it's just going to be healthy and very little fattening ingredient will be used in their cooking.
Okay. One thing about that site is there's not a lot of area for the handling of trash. So how are you going to handle trash? I know there's space for some cans off to the side, maybe a small dumpster. So are you going to have trash pickup every day, or how is that going to work? Or every other day?
perhaps our landlord
Okay.
is here to help us out.
Sure, please.
I understand there are dumpsters currently, but I'm not sure how often is needed to make sure.
Hi, I'm Jack Arouche, my brother George Arouche.
Hi.
Hi, we bought the building actually exactly 5 years ago now.
Okay.
From Despina, the Greek lady that used to own the building.
And had a sub shop in there a few years ago.
There was a sub shop years ago, and before that it used to be City Farms, which I think went under, and CTU took it after that.
Right.
So the way CTU started, they started out as a restaurant and they changed few different venues. At one point in time, they had few seating. One point in time, they were doing more of a fish sell type of a thing, fresh fish, and selling sushi. Whereas the last few years was more of a school on the weekends, during the days, and they also had a sushi bar in the front. So they were preparing a lot of seafood, a lot of sushi, and he was also distributing it to the colleges around the neighborhood. I'm not sure if you've seen his big truck. Odor and trash is a huge concern for us. Ever since we bought the building, our first priority was to really clean it up. The building was really run down. I'm not sure if you all remember. We have spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, and we cleaned the building up. So the last thing we wanted to do was disturb the neighbors with the trash and what have you. We're the landlords. He was a tenant. Obviously, he does not care about the space as much as we do. And we've built a good working relationship with all the neighbors. But to address your trash issue, he used to have trash pickup. Originally, when he was doing a lot of cooking, a lot of sushi prep, he used to be 3 times a week, every other day. He was not open on Sunday. Every other day, he used to have 2 big containers, and I'm not sure if you're familiar. I'm sure, well, you know.
It's a little alley on the side.
There's a good-sized alleyway, and in the back, we built him a platform, a concrete platform, so the dirt doesn't go down. So it has a nice platform where all the trash was stored. So odor was never an issue and trash was never an issue with 3-day pickup. During the last 2 years, as he did more of the school, he reduced it down to 2 days. So that was never an issue. The 2 big containers pretty much handled all the trash.
Okay, so just stay on top of it.
We will be enforcing similar things. We put similar things in the lease because we want to keep the neighborhood clean. Well, not only that, my father runs the tailor shop next to it, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so, and I'm not sure if you're aware that this space has been vacant for a few months now. And there has been a lot of interest. Our main concern was to really get someone in there that A, will succeed, and B, will keep up the space. Actually, right before we gave the lease to Michael and Christine, there was another guy really wanting the place to do more of a wine bar. We thought that was a little bit far-fetched, and we decided to go with them. It's sushi food, it's healthy food. The neighborhood really lacks. There's the pizza place across the street, and there's the cafe.
Right.
But there isn't this healthy sushi, and we thought the sushi prior to that, where he was selling sushi, was doing very well. He opened up, he bought a building in Newton. That's why he moved up, by the way. Not because the business was done there, because he bought his own building. So the space was doing great as a sushi place, and it really lacks that healthy, good food in the neighborhood, and that's why we thought they'll do very well.
Is that true? Are you guys more sushi eaters than wine drinkers?
No comment.
Selectman Heller.
So you're going to have 16 seats, as I understand this application. And do you plan to do a takeout business as well? Are you planning for people to come in and be able to buy at the counter and take away?
We will do a takeout and then sit down too.
Okay.
Sorry, have you seen the plans?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's right here.
The plans,
We have them.
there's a little sushi bar
Right.
for the takeout. as a goal. And
What about delivery? Are you contemplating doing that as well?
Yeah, we're doing the delivery. We will hire people to just do the delivery to the neighborhood of the place.
Yeah, just be careful. Sometimes there are issues if the delivery vehicle is left running and idling, and so just be aware of that.
When we hire the people, the person, we need to hire the person with the experience, with the pretty good skill, and, follow the route of the driving. So.
Right. Selectman Green?
I wish you all the best. I always like to learn about new restaurants in town. My kids love sushi, and when my daughter gets back, I'm sure she'll say, where can I go that's new here in Brookline? So you may show up. Just two comments. There are a lot of sushi restaurants in Brookline, some good, some not so good. What's going to distinguish you from the others? And secondly, a lot of sushi restaurants use brown rice instead of white rice, or offer brown rice. I know that's not the best rice to use for sushi, but it is a little more healthy, and it's a concern of mine. Do you have any plans to use brown rice? I know this is not the issues that we're really voting on, but I'm just curious.
I'm sorry. I have a little bit losing my voice, so.
So what distinguishes you and the brown rice?
Oh, okay. Actually, like you said, brown rice is more healthier than the white rice because the carbohydrate is not higher than the white rice. We will do the two-way. It depends on the customer request. If they want the brown rice, we will do the brown rice. It all depends on the customer's need. So we will, first of all, when we opening, we will do the free serve to the neighborhood. See, we will ask for concern about the neighbor, see if they, how do they like the food, and do they like the signature food that we have from my brother invented in China. He will bring it to here to make it different than the other sushi place. The fire cake, the pancake, he made it different than here. So yeah, the rice is all the sauce he will make it. We will make it our own sauce, which is suitable for the customer. It's not that fully healthy. And my brother and I are also concerned about customers' health and the comment about our food. So whatever customer have not satisfied with our food, we will make it and improve it in a better way. So.
Well, this isn't a public hearing, but I'll invite anyone from the public who wishes to speak, either in favor or not in favor of this application. Mr. Micklejohn.
Thank you, Chairman Wyszynski. I'll be brief. I'm Randolph Micklejohn. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 5, and I'm speaking mostly tonight on behalf of the officers of the Greater Point Neighborhood Association, which is the association in this part of Precinct 5. Kendall Street is more or less the center of the neighborhood, and I live about the same distance from 5 Kendall as Selectmen Wyszynski and Franco do, although in the other direction. We see the opening of a new business as always an opportunity to make our neighborhood a better, more interesting place to live, so the association takes a very active role in engaging with our businesses, especially this week where, as I know 2 of you already know, this is the 2nd annual Taste of the Point. It's very encouraging to see another restaurant coming, because we have already three restaurants, Foley's and Pizza Stop and the Brick Wall Cafe, and we have a social event on the sidewalk. There's sampling in the restaurants, so I wish you a successful first year, and I hope you will participate in the Taste of the Point in 2016. And I hope you will consider joining our association. We do have member businesses and institutions with Kirkland's, the Brookline Music School, Goddard House, Refugio Cafe, on and on.
They do close the street, by the way, which is a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to mention the Taste of the Point, but you beat me to it, Mr. Micklejohn.
Well, I assume that means that the neighborhood association supports the restaurant.
Yes, very, very much.
For the record.
For the record, yes. Okay, so being that I see no more comment, I see no more members of the public wishing to speak on this, I will therefore move approval of the application of Toichi Ikiban LLC, doing business as Toichi Ikiban, Weekon Ma and Chang-Ru Ma, managers for a common victual license at 5 Kendall Street. I'll also note, before I ask for the vote, for the record, that the hours Sunday to Saturday, 11 to 10 p.m. The Health Department has approved the application subject to the standard conditions, and the Building Department has approved the application, and we've also received an approval from the Police Department earlier this evening. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. Good luck. Wish you the best.
I do feel that we should have heard from the gentleman who flew all the way from China, sorry, to, I don't know, do you want to say anything?
Seems like a long trip to me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Japanese, arigato gozaimasu. Chinese people speak Chinese, 谢谢. Guangdong话, 多谢. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck to both of you.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to the neighborhood. Okay, moving on to item 11, which is the question of approving the application of Ganko Group LLC, doing business as Ganko Ititsu Ramen, Leonard Nomura, and Mayumi Goku LLC, shareholders, managers for a common victular license at 318 Harvard Street.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing us to
Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Leonard Nomura.
Okay.
This is Kent Iwaoka. Mayumi Sengoku is the woman in the back row. We're here today to present our plans for the restaurant that will be opening up at 318 Harvard Street. Let me start off by first explaining our concept. The concept of the restaurant is going to be ramen noodles. It's going to be a ramen noodle restaurant, which is going to be authentic in that the chef, Ken Uoka, has gone through a lot of training and research. He's gone to Japan and to study under ramen masters, if you will, to perfect a broth. And it's not the same ramen noodles that most of you, maybe most of you, have had experience in.
It's not the 50-cent
cooking
package.
in your little electric stove in your dorm room. It's
We've
not,
all been to college.
Yes, yes, exactly. So we've come very far away since then. This is a broth. It starts with the broth, which takes hours and hours to make from bones of pigs, and basically that's how you extract the flavor from that. And of course, we have other broths available that are ideal for vegetarians as well. And in this broth, we put the noodles in it, and then that's what the ramen is. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but recently there's been a boom in popularity in ramen noodle shops here in Boston and Cambridge and elsewhere as well, but there's not one in Brookline, as far as I understand. And I think it's time that Brookline has their own ramen noodle place that they can be proud of. And I think this is a restaurant that we can definitely do that with. I'm an attorney by trade. However, I have also been restaurant consulting, most notably recently a Japanese restaurant in downtown Boston called Zai. My partner here, the chef, Ken Iwaoka, he's been a chef for approximately 20 years. mostly as in the Japanese category, sushi, and everything else underneath the sun for Japanese cuisine. The other person, Mayumi Sengoku, she is the other member of the LLC, as well as I am. The location, as I said, would be at 318 Harvard Street. I'm sure you have their menu.
That's the arcade building, right?
Yes, exactly. And so it'll be inside there. It'll be a small, it'll be a small space. What was it, 17? 17 seats. And so it's going to be, the turnover is going to be fairly quick, and that's what happens in these ramen places. Most of the customers come in, order it, and the soup is prepared pretty much immediately. And then they eat, and then, so the turnaround is fairly quick. At that location, the menu that you have in front of you, we have a very small appetizer menu because we'd like to focus the customer's attention to the ramen itself. Now, there's various different types of noodle ramens, as you can see on the menu. Do any of you have any questions regarding the concept of ramen noodles?
No.
And what it is, or?
Selectman.
Yeah, are you going to have in the front window a bunch of plastic versions of your, because if you're going to be authentic.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think you have to have that.
Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have that. Yeah.
That's a first.
I've been to Japan, I've eaten ramen noodles, and they always have the plastic thing. And I didn't know how to speak any Japanese, so I would just point at the thing I wanted.
The plastic that you wanted.
Yeah, the plastic that I wanted.
And mostly they're outside of the store.
Yeah.
And hopefully when they serve it, it's not plastic. Right? Selectman Green.
Yeah. Could you give me a sense of what types of noodle, what are the noodles made out of, and you know, we're always health conscious about carbohydrates.
Let me give the mic to the chef.
The noodle mainly made out of wheat, flours, and water. That's pretty much it, very simple. And it doesn't contain egg, so it's considered as the vegetarian noodle.
Let me bring this back into the regulatory stuff that comes under our purview. The restaurant that you're replacing had an alcoholic beverage license. You're not applying for an alcoholic beverage license.
Not at this time.
Okay, so just be aware, you don't have a license.
Yes.
You won't be able to serve beer, wine, or whatever you would do.
And we will follow up with an application for the beer and wine at a later time. But right now, we'd like to go ahead and open up the store without it.
Okay.
And do we have, how many of those do we have remaining?
As I understand, you are seeking to transfer that existing license?
Yes, correct.
Well, you have to do that within a certain period of time. I'm not sure exactly when. But if you don't, I do believe there is another license available, at least one.
But we renew licenses at the end of the year, so if they haven't applied for the transfer by that time, the former one would lapse, right?
Correct.
But
What's your time frame?
Well, the seller waiting for a certificate of good standing from the state. So it's based on, we're just waiting for the paperwork from the state as a seller side.
So timing-wise, if we could all do it at once, of course we would. But unfortunately, we are waiting on documents that are outside of control. So at this time, we just decided to move forward with the CV license and the entertainment license application.
Okay. Any other questions from the board, comments from the board?
And not to interrupt, ramen is a very healthy food, Selectman Green. If you're worried about, health issues, it is a very...
have the vegetarian soup noodle as well, too. So.
Pardon me?
The vegetarian noodle soup.
The vegetable one at the bottom.
Well, I may just eat the broth and the pork and leave the ramen noodles out, because I don't think they're that healthy.
The vegetable, it's we'll make the vegetable stock and 100% vegetable.
Oh yeah, the vegetable soup is absolutely 100% vegetarian.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I notice your hours are until 10 o'clock PM from Sunday to Thursday and Friday and Saturday to 11. And you're in the arcade at the MJ Ready spot. By the way, that I always thought that was a very good little restaurant. I always like to go there for lunch. So you have big shoes to fill. But is that arcade open at that hour? What are other businesses in the arcade open until that hour?
Okay, other businesses not open.
I don't think so.
Probably they close 8 or 9, but I do have the agreement with the leasing office that we are allowed to open till basically 11 p.m. every day. And then that's stated on the lease.
Okay.
I think it's an intriguing concept, and if everyone else has a ramen restaurant, we definitely need one. Yeah.
This isn't a public hearing, but I'll invite any members of the public who might be here to speak in favor or not in favor of this application. I don't see any other comments from the board. Then I'll note that the health department has approved the application subject to the standard kinds of conditions that the health department imposes. The building department has also approved the application, and we received earlier a police department approval. With that said, I will move, there's going to be 2 motions. First, it's the approval of the application of Ganko Group LLC, DBA Ganko Itetsu Ramen, Leonard Nomuru, and Mayumi Sengoku LLC shareholders, managers for a common victual license at 318 Harvard Street. All those in favor, Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. And I'll move approval of the application of Ganko Group LLC, DBA Ganko Itetsu. One of these days I'll be able to pronounce it. Ramen, so please excuse me. Leonard Nomuru and Mayumi Sengoku LLC shareholders, managers, holder of a common victual license at 318 Harvard Street for an entertainment license to include radio and taped music. All those in favor? Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green? Aye. And the chair votes aye. Good luck.
Thank you very much, members of the board.
When are you going to open?
When? Yeah. When we are targeting beginning of August.
Oh, okay. Things slow down in Brookline in August.
No, because that's when the graduate students start coming
And so
back.
that's what our plan was,
Yeah.
before the students come back,
Yeah.
have it open, set up.
And get your operations,
Yeah.
okay. Cool.
Thank you very much, members.
Good luck. Okay, so we have one more, and this is an all kinds alcoholic common victualler outside seating license. And it's the question of approving the application of Number 2 Inc., DBA Coolidge Corner Clubhouse, Andrew Pomper, owner, holder of an all kinds of alcoholic beverages license as a common victualler at 307A and 308 Harvard Street for outside seating for 4. Welcome, and tell us what's up.
Just looking to add to our 26 years in Brookline and add a couple of deuces on the street. Compete with Washington Square a little bit, and offer 4 seats on the sidewalk for people, to enjoy their food.
I think we were talking earlier, not in violation of the open meeting law, but...
You were talking to yourself.
Well, you and I were talking on the phone, which
Oh, right, okay.
I think we're allowed to do, just mentioning that we had some concerns we wanted you to address. And that is that I think there isn't a lot of room there in front of your place, and so there was a discussion about putting these seats right out near where the parking meters are, or the tree wells.
A gentleman from the planning board, I believe, Mark, I forgot his last name, came out and did the measurements and decided that there should be a table in front of, if you're facing the building, in front of the left window of the restaurant, and the other one would be closer to the street. So that it'd be like, they would not be both on the building or both on the streets. It was one and one.
Well, the problem from our point of view is because you serve alcohol, when there is a street, or
Outdoor seating,
sidewalk,
yeah.
seating, and there is the service of alcohol, it's supposed to be marked off with like a rope or something like that. I guess the idea is to delineate, no alcohol beyond this point or something. So obviously, if you do it in the way you're talking about, that doesn't work for kind of roping these seats off.
So let me just read from the actual regulations. It says, and this is talking about outdoor seating for liquor license establishments. Outdoor seating areas must be enclosed by a fence, rope, or other means to prevent patrons or members of the public from wandering in or out. The license should be visible from the outside of the premises and from the inside, so on and so forth. So there's a requirement in the regulations that the outdoor seating where alcohol is presumably going to be served be set off by a rope, a fence, some other demarcation of this is restaurant seating where alcohol is going to be served and this is the public sidewalk.
So we can provide that if that's necessary.
Yeah, but I don't think it works for your table out next to the tree. I mean, I think you can work that for your table right next to the building, but that isn't really going to work for your table that's out near the tree, right? I mean...
Well, how's it also going to work? The table's up against the curb where there are parked cars, so someone parks the car, they're going to have to open the car door. Is there room to open the car door if the table is right up against the curb? It's a 10-foot wide sidewalk, so the drawing shows where there's going to be 8 feet clearance with a 24-inch table, so that has the sidewalk right up against the street, the table right up against the street. So I don't see how that's going to work.
I was actually wondering if you went from the round table to just a little
cocktail
rectangular table that was kind of could be flatter against the wall, if you could do both of your tables up next to your building.
I mean, I'm just going by the measurements that were taken, by the gentleman that came out, and that's what he said would work best.
Yeah.
I think there's a tree and a tree well that's creating some problems, but I think as Ms. Daly pointed out, maybe if the table wasn't as wide in some way, but you have the seats on each side of that table, right?
Right. The table, I don't have the drawing in front of me, but it's not in front of the tree well.
No, it's I know, but you have to move it because the tree well, if the table and the tree well were there, the passageway wouldn't be 5 feet or something, I guess. I think that's what the gentleman was concerned about.
If the table was in front of the tree well, that's correct, right. And so that's why it was moved closer, I guess, to the parking meter, if that makes sense.
Oh, I see, because if it were up against your building, it would have to be in front of your door. Is that the problem?
No, not the door, but there wouldn't be enough room between the table and the tree well. The tree well, unfortunately, isn't depicted on this plan, which is a problem. We really should see all the features of the area.
Well, one of my suggestions, though, is if instead of having a 2-foot wide round table that kind of sticks out, if you went to just a sort of very narrow little table where people could sit there with their drink
or a stand-up bar type table.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't maybe be a great place to sit and have your full dinner. But if you want, people waiting while they get seated or people who are just coming for snacks and drinks or something like that.
So
You know-
you're referencing the table closest to the street, that one?
Well, both of them are marked here as 24 inches, and I'm just
Right, but it seems like
wondering,
the concern is with the one closest to the street?
Right.
we have a big problem with the one closest to the street, because we don't see how you can rope that off and say this is the area where alcohol is served when it's not, you know, it's one thing to have these ropes and everything when it's near your building. It's kind of, you know, I know there are some places in town where they put the little table and chairs out closer to the street, but I don't think those are ones where alcohol is served. So that's, we have this extra requirement. If you're serving alcohol outside, you're supposed to kind of delineate it with a, you know, little rope area or something, and we're having a problem seeing how you could do that.
Isn't there also a problem if a car is parked right next to it and there's a passenger in the car and they get out, they're going to smack right into the table and...
Yeah, I think where the table is marked is closer to the meter where a driver's door couldn't be if you were actually in the spot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm happy to look into that other table closest to the street to see if there's one, with, you know, that is a smaller diameter or a different shape.
I eat at your restaurant.
Thank you.
Not a lot, but you do enjoy it, and my kids enjoy going there too. I'm eating kids. I just don't see, just recalling sort of the layout of that sidewalk, how this makes any sense in terms of just room for your service to maneuver around. And it seems to me that maybe you want to look at some other alternative involving a smaller width of the table that is set up more as a stand-up bar or something like that. Because from my knowledge of this area, I can't see how that would work. In addition to the issue of roping in the area.
I mean, we're just going by the regulations as far as the dimensions that were given to us.
So I see the director of planning is here. Maybe she wants to comment on this. Or was it DPW who told them?
She was involved.
Was DPW?
Yeah, it was Mark Mansfield, I believe.
Okay.
Let me see if I can cut through this and see if we can come up with something that might work. I think the sense I'm getting from my colleagues is a table at curbside doesn't work.
Can I make one more point?
Sure.
But I'm also concerned about the pedestrian flow. And there's a lot of pedestrians in Coolidge Corner and on this sidewalk. I know because I live near there and I walk by, and you know, you're always trying to do a little dance and get around groups of people who are going either which way, and especially if you're walking with a dog. I mean, and to me, this just makes that process a lot more difficult. And with the ice cream place next door, and you have a lot of people kind of pouring out there and eating their ice cream and kind of, it creates a congestion, I think, that would not work in that location. So I'm concerned about, for a number of different issues, about placing a table next to the curb.
Okay, so I sense less of a concern with the table against the building. What I'd like to suggest is we approve tables against the building, and then see if the applicant can work with staff to make this work over here, either through a smaller table, adjusting it a little bit to see if we can fit something there.
No, I have a concern about that. I would prefer if we held, since we're going to, hold the curbside one, but I also have a concern about the roping off of the other table and cutting down on the amount of pedestrian space. And that is, as I say, congested, especially in the summer, it's a congested pedestrian walkway. And so I'm concerned about it. I'd like to see what happens when they draw in the roping.
We allow, the roping is just,
Yeah, I mean,
that doesn't
I can
take
tell you
long.
at some of the other places, they put it right up against the table. It doesn't take a lot of extra room. Although, again, as I say, I think you could do a different table that wouldn't stick out quite so much, and then,
my motion would be to approve tables against the door, the building, if it meets departmental approval, or how do we word that?
Yeah, I think what we're concerned about is that there's a sufficient the path of travel between the table and that tree belt. So however you want to word that, we'll get the staff to come out and work with you and try to figure it out.
Yeah, maybe you use a smaller table, shift it a little, but then if we can't get it to work, that'll be kind of it.
well, we could authorize the one to the left of
Right, yeah, we can
their-
authorize that, and then the other one will be subject to staff approval.
What about if we put the second one in where it's drawn on the plan with no alcohol service to that table?
No.
No.
Because there's also the problem of the cars and you're again interfering with the pedestrian traffic. The pedestrians are going to then be weaving, basically.
Yeah, although, I mean, I know down the street at the fish taco place, they have their tables
They do.
out near the street.
It's not as busy.
It's not quite as busy, that's true.
No.
And they don't serve alcohol, I don't believe. So it's, seems to, I guess it works okay there. I haven't heard any
I think we just need
complaints about
to
it.
look at it. Let's look at the tree lawn,
Yeah.
that tree belt. Maybe there's a way we can,
Yeah. I mean, my guess is if you find a different table, you might be able to make this work, not a round table, but something that would go up against the building a little flatter.
Okay, so I'm going to move approval of the table on the left.
Could we separate it?
Okay, I'll separate it. So we'll have so let's do, okay, this is only 4 outdoor seatings. So it would be, the first motion would be to approve the table shown, and it would be the table closest to JP Licks. That's shown as against the building on our drawing. My second motion would be to conditionally approve a table against the building with staff approval that sidewalk width distances are adequate to meet standards and regulations.
On the
Wouldn't you need that for
right
the
side
first
of
one?
On the right side.
Wouldn't you need that staff approval for the first table too?
They've already got it.
They've
That's
already
what this
got it.
map is.
it's already sufficient.
Okay.
Okay.
See, the problem is there's a tree well here, so the distance isn't as great.
And the staff approval include the roping off of that area?
That's
That's
by,
part of the
yeah, that's part of the
regulation.
regulations. So, okay, so on the first motion to approve the table that is shown on our drawing against the building, all those in favor? Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
Aye.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
The chair will vote aye. Second motion is to conditionally approve a table against the building for 2 seats with staff approval conditioned on staff approval that there's adequate space and sidewalk width.
Could I speak to that for just a second?
Sure.
I'm going to vote against that motion. I think that the staff obviously didn't see the problems with the table at the corner, at the curb, and I'm comfortable charging them with approving this. I'm not comfortable that that would work. I'd rather have the applicant come back to us with a diagram and maybe, you know, a smaller table or whatever. I'm not saying I'm opposed to the table, but I'm opposed to not having the review.
Well, I'm comfortable with the staff, given that we've expressed our desires, and...
I assume, though, Mr. Kleckner, you will make it very clear what exactly the concerns were here.
Yeah, I sure will. I'm sort of embarrassed I didn't catch it earlier, and we should not have approved that, I don't believe. Maybe there was a thought that because, you know, that maybe there wasn't going to be alcohol service, but with alcohol service, I just don't see how that could possibly work. But I think we can make it work. I really do. I'll try to get staff out there, and I'll go out there myself and take a look at it. And I think we only need about 4 or 5 feet of clearance for pedestrian passage.
I don't know. You need to be able to get wheelchairs.
That's a busy...
It's a very busy corner.
Well, we have a lot of them in a lot of busy places, so you're right.
Yeah.
It's true. I'm trying to balance the need for the restaurants to thrive and...
Well, generally, I like outdoor seating, so, you know,
Yeah, and so do I.
I'd like to see them make it work.
And Coolidge Corner Clubhouse does thrive without the outdoor seating as well. And you've done very well.
Not like it used to.
So you have my motion, okay. So all those in favor of the motion to conditionally approve the seating against the building, say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
Selectman Heller?
No.
Selectman Green?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So work with staff.
We'll get somebody out to visit with you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Moving on. Article 18. I guess I'll turn this over to Mr. Kleckner.
Well, this, Mr. Chairman, this has to do with the vote taken at the recent annual town meeting. It was a resolution under Article 18 that charged the Board of Selectmen to study and consider in good faith the taking under the powers of eminent domain 2 buffer zone parcels for a permanently publicly accessible active recreation space. This is at the Hancock Village development. I will say that I met with the petitioner, Ms. Frawley, last week. I thought we had a good conversation. I think we agree on the need for information and objective and an expert facts in order to consider this. The question I think that the board is being asked to really tonight, as I understand, is whether, you know, that be done by a committee, by a consultant, or some variation thereof, or a combination thereof. My only concern with a committee managing the process is a few things. Number one, it's a very tight time frame. The resolution is intended to inform or provide an opportunity for an article to be inserted at the November town meeting, including a possibility of a citizen's petition. And as I read the article, that would be by August 20th, the way our proposed schedule for the November town meeting works. That's very tight. You've got the issue of, the sensitivity of the information, because we don't want to play this out in public when we're really strategizing effectively on how to take property without it being too expensive or challenged by law.
Or whether to take it.
Or to take it at all. So there becomes the issue of the open meeting law and how that works with the committee. So my thought was to have a consultant do it, but have a committee who is there to select the consultant, perhaps provide the consultant with some general direction, and then after the study is completed, then to reconvene and advise the Board of Selectmen. But I understand that's not necessarily Ms. Frawley. I don't want to speak for Ms. Frawley. She can do that herself.
Selectman Daley.
Yeah, I'm going to say that I think that this committee will need some expert advice from a lawyer who's well-versed in eminent domain. But I can envision I know that Selectman Heller has agreed to take on this committee, and I can envision, her working with some hardworking citizens with this expert advice to put a report together. I will admit, August is awfully tight to do that, and I don't know, whether you're going to be able to have a final report by August. In fact, I'd be frankly impressed and astonished if you were able to have a final report by then. But I can see that, we have a lot of people in town. I think if you beat the bushes, you're going to get some people. It always astonishes me how much expertise we have in this town on various subjects, and I think that you could find some people who were familiar with this area of the law, or people like Ms. Frawley, who's made herself familiar with this area of the law. And so I would lean a little more toward a committee working on this with, I think that they would need a legal expert to give them some advice, but then that there'd be other research into, other eminent domain cases and stuff like that that our citizen committee members could do without spending all the money to have a consultant spending a lot of time doing research. I think, as I say, a legal expert in eminent domain who can clarify things for this committee, advising them and coming to a certain number of their meetings and so forth would be critically important, but I don't think we need to pay consultants to do a lot of research that, frankly, I think people in town could do as well or better. And, I also think that gives the advantage of not having, getting several points of view focused on this issue, not just one consultant's point of view.
Another model we have used is we have a committee to select a consultant to study the issue, and then the consultant then has a charge and then comes back to, and we can decide who they come back to, be it that committee or some other group, probably that committee, I guess. But under that model, I would see fewer meetings, but I would see most of the work being done by a professional, as opposed to citizens doing the work.
Well, are you talking about asking a law firm to do a legal brief on this area of the law and what our options are?
Definitely.
I mean, that I think would be helpful.
But what about the value? I mean, who's going to determine the value of the land? That's a very technical area of law. Unless you have a valuation expert on your committee, I think you're going to have to pay for that.
Well, I would think, I certainly would recommend that one of the people you invite to serve on this committee would be perhaps the chairman of our Board of Assessors, who does happen to be an expert on some of that stuff, I believe.
It seems to me that the issue in the long run boils down to a legal one, and we've got to have that information. And I don't know if there are any experts in eminent domain, legal experts in Brookline, but I would hesitate. I think it's very important. It's a very sensitive issue. It's important to have someone who comes in completely, with a blank slate about this, because you don't want. And I'm sure we all have our own feelings about how this should go forward, but we want to know that we're getting the best advice possible, because the consequences of making this decision are very costly. There's a lot of risks involved. And we need to know, we need to really understand that. As I understand it, this motion would basically allow the town administrator to request a reserve fund transfer so that we would have the funds in place in order to effectuate the hire of a consultant.
Yeah, okay, I think where we differ, though, is I think there's a difference between asking, say, a law firm that has expertise in this area. We are considering exercising eminent domain. Give us a legal memorandum and the cases that would apply and what the law is in this area so we know what the parameters are, versus saying to a consultant, you kind of go out and look at this particular property and, you know, give us all the, so you do need some, you do need some assessment help as well. You need somebody to look at that, and that would probably not be the same person. I'm just saying, so the model could be you hire a consultant who then gets all these sub-consultants to do these various pieces. I think that's going to be a very expensive way to go, and perhaps not come out with the best results, as if your committee was kind of, you do need money, I will agree, to get some legal expertise and to get some assessment expertise, but I'm not convinced that just hiring a consultant to put it all together is really the way you want to go, because then you're going to get that person's point of view. And
well, can we step back a second and talk about how this citizens committee would be conducted? We've expressed some concern about having this play out in public view, and if we did appoint a citizens committee, has there been any thought given as to whether it could be an open meeting, or we would have to have these conversations in executive session?
I think an awful lot of it would have to be done in executive session, but I guess we need to talk to town council about, certainly this board has authority to have executive sessions. Does a subcommittee set up by this board have authority to have executive sessions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I previously expressed some concern to our chair about the time frame that we're operating under here. I think it's tight, whichever road we go down, whether it's hiring a consultant or having a citizens committee. I think based on vacation schedules and the difficulty that may implement in terms of getting a quorum, having a inclusive process, there are some real concerns with a citizens committee, at least in my mind. Now, a consultant presents its own set of problems. You know, there's some heavy-duty legal work that's got to be done here, some assessment work. I'm not convinced that we can meet a August 20th deadline there either, but I think it's a lot more probable that we'll be able to stick to the time frame that was laid out in Warrant Article 18.
Would you have, how would you have if we would go that way, how would you have the consultant selected, and then who would the consultant be reporting to? Us, or some board that filters it before it gets to us, a committee that filters it before it gets to us? And who's the consultant going to be, I guess, reporting to and discussing things during the process, because questions are going to come up. You know, is it going to be staff?
Yeah, I mean, what kind of consultant would it be?
Well,
at a minimum, you obviously have to have someone who's very well versed in eminent domain law. And you need someone who has not only can do the research, which, but you need somebody who's been on these cases and who understands the parameters of them. That's not something that you can necessarily, go to the library and find out. You need someone who has perhaps represented municipalities in these things and represented the other side in these things.
I think if you turn the whole project over to somebody with those qualifications, it's going to be very, very expensive. That's why I'm saying that bringing them in to give you the legal memo and bringing somebody with expertise in assessment to give you some data on that, and then you guys put together the report, I would think is because as I say, I think you could choose people to be on this committee who would have a fair degree of knowledge or expertise in the law, at least, if not specifically in eminent domain and property law, and that they could add something to it without all of it being incredibly high-priced lawyer rates.
But the recommendation that would come out of such a committee would be very limited.
Well, there's a limited scope of this thing.
But it's even more limited if you hand it over to...
Well, if you're handing it over to a consultant completely, I wouldn't expect a recommendation to come out of it. I would expect, more of a factual analysis and a risk analysis and a cost analysis.
I'm most interested in the risk analysis and the cost analysis, yes. And I think that given the background of the situation, the facts are going to make a difference. And so we need to proceed, with a good degree of...
So, I see it as a very technical exercise that is then going to have to go to somebody else for the policy analysis. And
I'm just telling you, $15,000 is not going to buy you much time of high-powered attorney who does eminent domain.
Well, we don't.
And that's what I was suggesting is you could, if you had that amount of money and you said, okay, we want you to come for a certain number of hours to 3 of our meetings and, give us some background material and have one of your associates drop a memo, then you might get, you might be able to stay within your $15,000. I'm highly skeptical that somebody is going to be able to put together the legal information, put together an assessment of the property value, and for you to be anywhere near that $15,000, I'm just highly skeptical about.
I don't know that we would need that person to put together the assessment. I think you're correct that it may be that our own assessor can do it, maybe in consultation with some others, but the legal issues, I think, are going to drive our decision, and the risk analysis and the cost analysis are going to really, and it's a legal process. The cost of that is, going to be significant if we decide to go down this road, and we need to know what that is. And we can't come up with that, and I don't think, as many experts as we have in this town and citizens, I don't think they can come up with a cost analysis of that. I don't think the assessor can do it. We need somebody who's been involved in this and who understands the parameters of the problem and the issue.
So let me ask maybe a silly question. Are we expecting the report of this consultant or this group to be the final step on which we take action, or potentially take action to do a taking, or are we simply looking for a high-level investigation to decide whether this is economically and practically a feasible thing to pursue further? Are we looking for sort of a first cut? Does this pass the, one cut below conversation? Or are we looking for a total package to be here, to know exactly what the dollar amount is going to be, what the potential risks are?
Wow, well, that's, I guess, the
Because,
question.
let me just further, I don't want to, if it's going to cost us $100,000, and I'm making that number up, to get a full package of assessing analysis, legal analysis, legal risks to get put on our desk, and then we say, we can't afford the $10 million it's going to cost us to potentially do a taking. Well, we've just thrown $100,000 at it, where if for $15,000 or $10,000 or $5,000, we can get basically an idea of what we're talking about, that might be a decent investment of funds. I'm thinking out loud here.
I will say, as I say, I don't think you're going to get the kind of expertise you want to do the whole thing and put it all together in a package for anywhere near $15,000. But I'm willing to vote for a request for a $15,000 reserve fund. If we take out the word consultant and say for expertise for the study of eminent domain. So that could be for legal expertise, that could be for somebody who knows how to assess the property value. I mean, if you can find a consultant, Mel, who wants to do this whole thing for that amount of money, I'd be astonished, but that would be within this revised vote.
My expectation was that you'd do the legal piece separately. You'd have to find, your eminent domain expert, and you'd get a legal research and opinion separately. And then I think we need some information about the value of the land. How else would you make decisions without knowing how much?
Okay, so you were agreeing with me that there's no way one person for $15,000.
Well, I didn't say you couldn't do it for 15. That was my estimate, that you could do those two components for 15,000. That's a educated guess, but I could be wrong.
So then, okay, if we operate under the assumption that we could get the information we need for $15,000, we're back to the question of, do we have a committee? And if the answer is yes, what is the scope of the committee? Do we do it in a model like we did the school study, where we had a selection committee? Well, I'm thinking we have a selection committee, and then maybe that selection committee stays together and kind of does oversight and accepts the report. Ms. Frawley, I'm sure you have some views.
Thank you. I hope it's more than a view. I hope it's a few facts thrown in. We don't have a lot of recent information in Brookline. Regina Frawley, town meeting member from 16 and the author of warrant article 18. So I've gone back to the history of when we did have eminent domain as a rather frequent occurrence of Brookline. That was back in the late 50s into the 60s. We had at the time something that I would try to argue would be parallel to a committee. We had a Brookline Redevelopment Authority. And if memory serves me right, Mike Dukakis served on it.
Maybe we could get him.
I was thinking of it. I was thinking of it. So you look at what they had back then. Obviously, they had a great deal of staff costs back then, but they had some pretty impressive staffs. But on the committees that the authority had our own town treasurer or assistant town treasurer who could talk to bonding, for example, or should be able to talk to bonding, because this is a typical way you do it. The assessor, again, and they designed the approach, which is exactly what I'm hearing the question here is, and I'm afraid I agree most of all with Nancy Daly. They had 3 part-time consultants, one an expert in general planning, and I would argue that we have some people on our planning board in particular that might just be able to come up to snuff. Legal, town council has told me that there are some, this was a good 2 months ago now, that they were planning to become expert on eminent domain because they were thinking of a small sliver of taking for the Gateway East. So it's entirely possible, and with due respect to Mel, I don't think that the neighborhood would be arguing against the skills of our town council. I think we'd be very happy if she immersed herself in this. And finally, real estate valuations, exactly what you said. So these are, you've all hit on the 3 points of expertise needed. I think it's worth a little shot to see what we have existing in Town Hall and then get what we need on the outside floor under that $15,000, I would say. And that's taken right from an annual report back in 1958. So, there are 2 separate and independent appraisals made, this is back in '58, of the real estate, both for purposes of acquisition by the authority and for purpose of resale, later the latter known as reuse appraisal. Chapter 79 talks about 3 years of appraisals. The year of the taking, so if we presume the year of the taking could conceivably be as early as 2016, for example, that would be the first one, and then work 2 years backwards. That's required, I think, under Section 35 of the Chapter 79. So this is something I hope our skilled staff could do. We probably need a surveyor. That would be one thing I think we do need, is an outside surveyor who could actually measure each section of the parcels. From some of the GPS maps I looked at, even one side of a parcel was divided into sections, so you could do it by sections. There might be 3 on the Beverly Road side, and I don't remember how many on the Russet, but it could be done very scientifically that way, should there be some reason to consider some form of compromise. So those are some of the comments I would like to make, and I hope a few facts thrown in. I personally have a great deal of faith in our staff, so I think we need to ask them if they have faith in themselves. The 3 months estimated for town council to come up to snuff must be coming close to the 3 months, so she may already know. I'd be glad to also share the roughly 6 cases that go back to the 70s and the 80s on both one successful taking against a proposed 40B, and I think there were 5 losers. And when I read the losing cases, I went forward with this article because we're in good shape in terms of the reasons that they lost in court. We are ahead of that curve. We don't have exclusionary zoning. We have inclusionary zoning, for example, and that would be one of the main reasons. We've shown at least I think I've shown good faith. I think this study can be a demonstration of good faith, and that will be the first test and the final test that a judge would use. However you get there, a judge might choose one variable versus another, but it comes down to good faith. So those are some comments. Do you have any questions?
None from me.
I'll be honest, I feel like I'm being forced to choose between a cost calculation and faith in meeting the time that's laid out in this, albeit non-binding resolution, that we may not technically, legally need to hold our feet to the fire, but I take the Will of Town meeting very seriously.
It has often been the case that a committee has to come back and say, here's the progress we've made. We don't have a final report. We haven't completed it.
May I add to
And
that?
especially when we're talking about over the summer, but.
Let me add to that. You're absolutely on point, Selectman Daley. Forget which case it was, whether it was Pleasant Street, elderly housing, or the farm, B2, but one of them had to do exactly that. They just couldn't get it done in time, and they simply extended it. That's all. And I'd be more than happy, if necessary, to submit an additional warrant article for November to justify extension.
Well,
I don't think it requires
a warrant article.
Oh, good.
May I make a suggestion? It occurs to me that perhaps what we ought to do is suspend the discussion at this moment and have a conversation. I will have a conversation, maybe with one other of you, with Jocelyn Murphy, to understand how she sees the parameters of this and what she sees as the expertise of the staff in being able to.
And I think you'll need to talk with planning and with assessing as well.
Right. And, you know, I think the suggestion that we talk to the treasurer as well, I mean, I think that what we need to do is ferret our way through what we think we really can do in-house. In the meantime, it is clear that we will need some funding.
Yeah, as I say,
And
if we
so-
change consultant to expertise, or whatever word you want to use,
like
I'm
that.
willing to vote for the reserve fund transfer.
Okay, so
So we proceed with this.
the advisory committee is meeting, I think, what, the first week of July.
July 7th.
So there, you know, we could vote the authorization for the reserve fund transfer just to get it out of the way, and then.
Unless you think we want the staff to weigh in on what they also think are the costs, other costs.
Well, we've heard that it's going to cost more than $15,000, if anything. At least that's the sense of this board.
Well, we have 2 weeks before, we have 2 meetings before the advisory committee meets, so there's no rush to vote.
Well, you know what, I mean, I think.
Maybe we could get an opinion from our town council, too.
Because if town council's office can do a piece of this, if planning can do a piece of this, if assessors can do a piece of this, and then we would need some outside help, that would be, then maybe then the $15,000 might even be generous. I don't know.
Right, well, then it makes sense to hold this as
Okay.
well, and to do some exploratory
fair.
work in the next week or two, and come up with a plan.
That's fair. Okay. So we're going to table this discussion, and that's the last agenda item. So that's it for our meeting. Thank you very much.
Was this information helpful?
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.